Everybody got their packets? All right. All right. You guys got a writing utensil? Everybody got one of those? Yeah? Good job, Trevor. All right, so tonight we are on session 2. It says the motive. But before we get started, we're going to pray. We're going to talk to God, okay? Father, thank you so much for what you're doing. And God, you're just awesome. You are awesome in all ways and all things. And God, you've been faithful to us. You've been so, so faithful to us. And so, Lord, it's just an honor to be able to be here tonight and just hang out with each other and sing songs and talk about you and pray and learn more about us, learn more about you. God, that you would even consider us. That's pretty awesome. Lord, you know the weights that we carry. Some of us right now are carrying some pretty heavy stuff. Some are carrying like physical stuff, pain and sickness. Some are carrying burdens in their hearts, broken hearts, Father. And we just bring it all before you. Speak to us, Lord, as deep calls to deep. In Jesus' name, amen. Amen. Alrighty, we got slide number 1 there. Motive. Guys, look at what the definition of motive is. Merriam-Webster said a motive is something such as a need or a desire that causes a person to act. That's your motive. Your motive for going down to the fire down there, you may have had a few motives. One, maybe you're a little bit of a pyro and you like to play with the fire. So maybe that's part of it. Maybe you like to eat hot dogs cooked over the fire and s'mores. Anybody get a good tasting s'more? Yeah. Anybody have any s'more mishaps? Yeah. Yeah, went in the fire, yeah. We saw some s'more mishaps, that happens. Maybe you like to be around a campfire because you love breathing in the smoke. You know. You're trying to work on early emphysema. You know, who knows? But guys, here's the thing. We have motives that drive us for everything that we do in life. Think about that. Think about that for a minute. When you go to school, there is something that is motivating you. Now, if you were like me back in the day, the motive for me going to school was not because I wanted to. The motive was I didn't want to get grounded for the rest of my known life. That's why I went to school. Now, some people are just like, they love school, right? And so that's why they're like, oh yeah, I'm going to go to school. My friends are there. So your motive is that. Or maybe your motive is if you don't, you're going to get grounded. You have a motive for the friends that you pick. Have you thought about that? That you have a motive behind it. You have a motive behind why you pick that certain person to be your friend. Maybe it's because they have something you want. Remember yesterday I was talking about how we tend to be selfish. And so sometimes we will pick out a friend because we're selfish. Okay, you guys are I want to just kind of challenge you a little bit on motive. What drives us to do the things we do. Look, name 3 things that might motivate us. Let's just go around the room. 3 things. Food. Huh? Rewards. And what? Money. Attention. Yeah.
Money, water.
Money, water, yeah, weird, yeah. Lemonade, games. Free t-shirts. Gifts, talents. Love, 2 more.
Failure.
Failure, ooh. We're going into philosophy class now. That's good right here. Motivation. Okay, motivation is your motivation. That's a good motivation. You should be a motivational speaker. Think about the things that motivate you. Remember I was talking about, hey guys, are you listening? No, you're not. Remember last night I was talking about how we're more than happy to serve that smoking hot guy or that smoking hot girl? Remember we were talking about that? We have that motive because we're shallow, right? That's usually what it comes from. It's not an attitude of saying, I want to serve you, regardless of what you look like, regardless of how you act, regardless of anything, I want to serve you. We don't typically do that. No. You know Jesus, right? So Jesus is, he's God. And he comes down to earth as man. He's the incarnation. And he is serving. You know what's crazy? The 12 dudes that he picked were like the Jewish schoolboy dropouts. They don't have it together. And so he comes to earth, and he, God, who created them, he picks these 12 dudes that argue with each other, and they want to be number one. They want to be the top dog. And they're fussing with each other, and they're just like causing him a lot of problems. But he says, no, I want you guys to follow me. His motivation was not the motivation that I would have. You see, if I'm going to start a world movement, I'm not going to pick like just the ordinary average people. I'm not going to pick the dropouts. I'm not going to pick the failures. I'm going to go like to the big universities. I'm going to find the best of the best of the best, right? But that's totally not what Jesus did. As a matter of fact, when God sent Christ here to the earth as the king of all creation, he sent him in a way that a king wouldn't come. He sent him to this girl that was like kind of a weird deal. She's a virgin? How are you a virgin? You're pregnant. That doesn't make any sense. You're right there, controversy. Jesus comes into the world through controversy. And then where is he born? He's born in Bethlehem. A king should be born in Jerusalem, not in Bethlehem, not in a little podunk town. That'd be like being born where I'm from Silver Cliff, Colorado. Nobody knows of Silver Cliff. People know Denver and Colorado Springs. Like I'll tell people, yeah, I'm from Silver Cliff. It's next to West Cliff. Where? It's up in that. I've never even heard of such a place. Okay, do you know where Denver is? Oh yeah, we know where Denver is. Do you live by there? No, we're not by there. They want to relate us to like cities on the Front Range. They have no idea. And Jesus is born in Bethlehem. The one who would change the world is born in a small town. And what's more, he wasn't even born in like a fancy hospital. He wasn't even born in a nice room. He's born out in an animal stable. It doesn't make sense. Where's that motivation? So motive here is something such as a need or a desire that causes a person to act. I knew a guy in Kansas City years back, and he used to be a meth user. He used methamphetamine, and he also sold meth. And so he said that on Sunday mornings, he would get up, and no matter what the weather was outside, it could be like a horrible blizzard or an ice storm. You get ice storms here. And he would go out, and like he needed to get his meth. It didn't matter how bad the weather was. And he would go, and he would buy his meth. His motive for meth drove him to do anything. Remember yesterday I said you'll do, like Chuck Beckler said, you'll do anything for the one you love the most, or anything for the thing you love the most. And so Josh would go out into whatever weather, whatever circumstances to get meth. Because what motivated him, his motive was driven by this need for this drug that controlled his life. You know, Josh worked out all the time. I mean, the guy was cut. Tattoos all over the place. And part of the reason was he was planning on going back to prison. And he would say, you know, when I'm going back to prison, I'm going to be the baddest dude in the yard. Nobody's going to mess with me. He knew the way that he was living life, he was going back to the yard. And so his motive for working out all the time, right, was to be the baddest dude in the yard. His motive for going out into horrible, horrible, horrible weather was his addiction to methamphetamine. His motive for stealing stuff, for robbing people, for committing crime, guess what? It was his life of sin. It was for women, it was for drugs, it was for motorcycles, it was for image. Does any of this sound familiar? Does it sound like what motivates you? What drives you? Because when we're honest, remember yesterday I was talking about the truth of serving. When we're honest about why we do stuff, a lot of it comes down to me. It comes down to you. Guess what? Josh ended up committing his life to Jesus. He became a pastor. He became a pastor of a church in Independence. And he would invite people over and over and over, ex-convicts, guys that he knew in prison. He would say, hey, yeah, you know me, I know you. Why don't you come to church? I got to tell you about this dude that totally changed my life, Jesus Christ. And they knew that Josh wasn't full of it. He wasn't just like some kind of religious clown. Josh walked the walk. Was he broken? Yeah. Was he a sinner? Yeah. But he looked to Jesus for everything in his life. Jesus became his motive. And I heard him talking one day, and at church, I visited his church, and he was saying, here's the thing. A lot of times, like on Sunday morning, when it's bad weather outside, we get up and like, it's bad weather. I really don't want to go to church. So I'm going to stay at home where it's nice and warm and safe. He said, but the fact is, for years, I used to get up on Sunday morning no matter what. And the motive that drove me was my motive for drugs. And so I would go out into horrible weather. And he said, you know what I was effectively saying? That I love drugs more than I love the one who actually saved my life. He said, that's how screwed up my priorities have been for most of my life. You see, that's what we do. We're like singing songs to Jesus. We're like, Jesus, 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 awesome God, holy, 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 love you, love you, love you. Oh, look, squirrel. And we're just like, we're drawn away easily. And we go running into other stuff. We get motive from other stuff. What about these 3 words? I know some of you already wrote them down. I love you. Huh? Is that a motive? Yeah. You'll do anything, not just for the one that you love the most. You'll do anything for the one that you think loves you. You know you guys will do it. And some of you are doing it now. Some of you are doing it now. Here's what I want you guys to do. I want all of you to close your eyes. I'm going to be looking around. I want all of you to close your eyes because I need you to process something with me. Close your eyes. I want you to imagine somebody that you absolutely adore. Somebody that you absolutely adore. And imagine that person looking you in the eye and saying, I love you. Keep your eyes closed. How does that make you feel? You're like, yeah, he loves me. She loves me. Isn't that great? Keep your eyes closed. Now imagine 2 hours later, that same person, now they look at somebody else in the eye and they say to that person, I love you. How does that make you feel? You still feel all fuzzy and warm inside? No. You can open your eyes, guys. Because the fact is, when we are imagining that person that we adore, and they look at us, they look in our eyes and they say, I love you. Oh, man. Oh, my word. I can't believe that they did that. I'm excited, Lance. She said she loves me. Okay?
Go, Lance. Go, Lance.
But then, when that same person, we see him later at school, we see him somewhere else, and they look at somebody else, and they tell that somebody else, I love you. You see, you feel robbed at that point. Because to you, when they said those words, I love you, there was a connection. Something happened there. And then you realize maybe it didn't happen. Look at the little side box there. It says, words are empty without context or action. Words are empty without context or action. John 3:16. Can anybody quote John 3:16? It's almost like you guys didn't believe it. No, seriously. Hey, guys, listen. It's almost like you didn't believe it. It was almost like it was a contest to see who could quote John 3:16 the fastest. Were any of you moved with deep emotion by John 3:16? Probably not. I know, because a lot of times I will quote it. I'll quote it to my congregation in Colorado. I'll say, folks, for God so loved the world that he gave his only one son. Right? And so then I'm nothing more. What did Paul write to the church in Corinth in the 13th chapter? He said, I am nothing more than a clanging cymbal. I'm nothing more than a resounding gong. Why? Does anybody remember why? I don't have love. You're right, Leo. Because there's no love. And when we're rattling off John 3:16, we're like, yeah, whatever. John 3:16, I learned that thing when I was 6 months old. Sitting there in my crib, smoking a cigarette, quoting John 3:16. I had a full beard. I got done quoting it. I went out, got on my motorcycle, and I went for a ride. It's what I did, you know. Me and the boys, 6 months old. We were the 6-month riders. We rode diapers. Think about it. Let me bring you guys back here. God so loved the world that he what? Gave? That he sent? Make the connection here. He so loved that he did something. God didn't look you in the eye and say, I love you. No, he said, let me show you how much I love you. I'm going to send the most precious thing that I have. I'm going to send my son to take your place. And I know the truth. God is saying, I know the truth, that you tend to look to other gods, and you look to other idols, and you look to other people for that love and for that adoration. You look to the other things that will motivate you, that will drive you. You look to relationships. You look to substances. You look to status. You look to sports. You look to automobiles. You look to motorcycles. You look to anything except the one that loves you the most. He said, I'll give anything for you. As a matter of fact, he gave everything for you. He sent everything for you. Romans 5:8. God demonstrated his what? His love for us in this. That while we were still yet sinners, Christ died. He didn't say, God demonstrated his love for us in this. While we were still yet sinners, God said, I love you. Just wanted you to know. Just going to take a little post-it note here. I'm going to love you, love God. Stick it on the refrigerator so you see it in the morning before you go to school. Because God loves you. He didn't do that. No, while you're like chasing after idols, you're chasing after sports, you're chasing after image, you're chasing after relationships, God comes into the earth and he says, Christ is going to be everything that you will ever need. And he will be slaughtered for you. Why? Because God demonstrates his love. Somebody look up 1 John 4:7-12. 1 John 4:7-12. Raise your hand when you got it. 1 John 4, 7 through 12. You got it, Leo? Okay, guys, listen up. Read it out loud, Leo.
Dear friends, let us love one another, for love comes from God. Everyone who loves has been born of God and knows God. Whoever does not love does not know God, because God is love. This is how God showed his love among us. He sent his one and only Son into the world that we might live through him. This is love, not that we loved God, but that he loved us and sent his Son as an atoning sacrifice for our sins. Dear friends, since God so loved us, we also ought to love one another. No one has ever seen God, but if we love one another, God lives on us, and his love is made complete.
Good. Did you guys hear that? I know some of you didn't, because some of you were talking. Because you don't care. I mean, honestly. I know, because 30 years ago, I was sitting where most of you are. Not in this chapel, but I was in a youth group that I didn't care about, except for the girls that were there. Really. And I didn't care when somebody like Leo would read scripture. It didn't matter to me. It wasn't a big deal to me. I had life figured out. I mean, at least that's what I tried to tell people. The fact is, inside I was dying. The fact is, inside, in my life at 15 years of age, I wanted to take my life. And that was my answer. In my mind, I just couldn't work up the courage to do it. My life wasn't worth living. I didn't believe that anybody loved me. And so I clamored for attention. I clamored for love. I clamored for any girl to look at me. I was going to this youth group at a church in Kansas City, and there was a girl there, man, she was it. She was beautiful. She was smart. She was outgoing. She was everything. I was like, yeah. She was the first girl that I really thought, I was like, she loved Jesus? Right? We were at a lock-in at the church. And I was just watching. I was so enamored with this girl. Yeah. I see her talking to is actually the pastor's son. She was looking my direction. I'm like, yeah, here we go. She's gonna suggest that I ask her to marry her. Yeah. I mean, it makes sense, I'm 15. Get married, right? She's hot. I mean, we're at a lock-in. What better time? But, our youth pastor's there. He could do the wedding. My good buddy Dan was there. He could be my best man. So I mean, oh, all right. Go in the bathroom, trying to, looking in the mirror, making sure, popping zits. Perfect. Yeah, you know what's right. And I go back out, and the pastor's son comes up to me. He's like, hey, see me. Yeah. My heart is just like, right? Hey, Mary Beth is talking to her. I was like, yeah, no. I saw it. Yeah, she said she doesn't want you around her. She doesn't want you to talk to her. She doesn't want you to look at her. She doesn't like you. There was my hope. That was my motive. Leo read that passage, kind of quoting again the John 3:16. God so loved that he sent. As a matter of fact, John goes on to write, and he says that God is the definition of love. God is love. It's not when I look you in the eye, or when somebody looks you in the eye, or you look me in the eye, or when Mary Beth looks me in the eye and says, I love you. No, it's the demonstration. Because again, words are empty without context or action. I can tell Mandy all day and all night that I love her. But it does not matter if I am not demonstrating my love for her. I can tell you that I love you, and those words are just empty. You can go home and you can turn on a favorite TV show and get more connection from something there of somebody, whoever, a hero or whatever, saying I love you to the screen than what you would from me. We become shallow enough in our culture that we tend to resonate more with what media is telling us about love than what God, who is the definition of love, communicates to us. Can you go to the next slide, Reg, please? Look at this. We all want to know we belong. We all want to know that we matter. We all want to know that we are loved without condition. And all of this is found in the person of Jesus. That's the only place it's found. The undisputed heavyweight champion of love is Jesus Christ. That's it. I dropped the ball with Mandy. I'm not the best husband. I dropped the ball with McKenna and Coleman and Easton. I'm not the best dad. I dropped the ball as a pastor for my congregation. I'm not the best pastor. I dropped the ball for you guys. I'm not the best camp speaker. Christ never drops the ball. He never falls short on us. He never leaves us empty. You guys listening over here? He doesn't drop kick us like we do to one another. You get what I'm saying? He committed to us fully. Go to the next slide. I got to tell you something. Let me make sure this is the right slide. We have a little, these two guys right here. Two cowboys. Guy on the left, that's Weldon Rusher. He's 20 years old. Guy on the right is Ben Rusher. He's 28. Brothers. These guys are cowboy, all right? And right here, they're just goofing around, obviously. If you don't know how to ride a horse, the one on the right, that's the proper way. Spin around backwards, hit it with your spurs, and yell. It'll be an awesome trip. Yeah, they're down there on the ranch. Those two guys were inseparable. They fought like brothers. They ranched like cowboys. They worked hard like cowboys. Man, they just... We had Ben over to our house a few years ago. Ben is just like... he had like this, the deep...
Hey, how you doing?
That's Ben. When you'd shake his hand, you could feel and hear bones crunch. Yeah, it's awesome. So polite, so respectful. This last Labor Day in September, they were having a Labor Day party at the ranch. There's a pond on the ranch. And Weldon, the younger one, he and a girl, they decided to swim across. So they jump in the water. The water's 41 degrees. And Weldon's stronger than she is. So he takes off, and he's just like leaving her behind, right? He's swimming hard. We had a lot of rain there in the valley this last summer. And so there's a lot of growth that's going on. And in the pond, the weeds were really growing a lot. Maybe some from the watershed feeding into the pond. And Ben gets out there and he starts getting tangled up in the weeds. And he's really struggling. If you've ever been tangled up in anything in water, you know what it is. terrifying, and he's starting to dip under. And the girl's trying to grab him and hang on to him to get him out of those weeds, but he's slipping, and she feels herself, when you're in water that's 41, you're heading for hypothermia. Your body will start locking down. And she could feel that, and so she turned and she swam back to the shore, and the friends are there. They're watching Weldon as he's dropping under, and the girls yelling, they're yelling, "Come on, Weldon, come on! You can make it!" And he's going under. And Ben is standing there on the shore, and he's watching his little brother dipping under. And Ben's not going to stand there. He's not going to stand there and watch his brother drown. And so Ben, I mean, this guy's a man's man. He is strong as an ox. And he just goes tearing in, jumps into the water, and just starts paddling as hard as he can. I mean, he's in full rescue mode. And he gets out, and he's grabbing onto Ben, and he's kicking, and he's starting to get entangled up in the weeds too, and he's thrashing, and Ben is thrashing, and Weldon, and they're both starting to go under. And in 41-degree water, you only have to take a couple gasps of that water, and your body starts shutting down. And they both slipped under the surface, and the water went calm. And their friends just stood there. They couldn't do anything. And they watched those two guys drown. They watched Ben give everything that he had for his brother to rescue him. You see, for Ben Rusher, it was never enough for him to tell his brother Weldon, "Weldon, I love you." That was never enough for him. He demonstrated his love. And he jumped into that icy pond, and he was swimming out there for all that he had to rescue his little brother. The Custer County dive team, they searched the waters all through the night. Couldn't find the bodies. They called in El Paso County, which is Colorado Springs. They bring down their specialized dive team, and they're using sonar, and they're searching all around through the weeds. It's just a mess. Finally, they find the two bodies, and they bring them up. And they put them in the bags, and they hauled them out. And it devastated our entire community. It was the biggest funeral Custer County, Colorado has ever had, by far. There's about 3,000 people that live in the entire county. There were 1,500 people that were at the funeral alone. Recently, I went to the courthouse. They had a big thing. Ben and Weldon's mom and dad were there, John and Elin. And they had a day, they set a day to memorialize Ben Rusher Day, because he gave up his own life to save his brother. In a selfless act, he gave even his own life to save his brother. And you know, there's stories like that. I mean, that moves me, obviously. That moves me to think, man, because I have an older brother, Dave. I fell into a swimming pool when I was a little kid. I didn't know how to swim. I was out on one of those like floating raft things, and it flipped, and I was underneath it. I didn't know how to swim, and I was just freaking out. My brother Dave, he jumped in, he grabbed me and lifted me up out of the water. And so when I think of what happened with Ben and Weldon, I think about my brother Dave saving me. He jumped in and rescued me. And stuff like that, stories like that move us, you know? But there is no greater love, Jesus said, than this, that a man would lay down his life for his friends. And he was talking of himself. You see, here's what happened 2,000 years ago. God looked at each one of us now, and he said, "You're full of sin." Yesterday, remember I was sharing with you about the truth of serving and how we tend to be selfish, and it's all this horrible stuff that comes out of us. That is what defiles us. And that sin is there, and God says, look, I don't want you to do this, don't do that, don't do that. And it's not because God's trying to be a party pooper. You realize that God gave us the 10 Commandments for our own benefit? It's not because he's trying to ruin our fun. G.K. Chesterton said it was actually easier for God to say the few things that we weren't supposed to do than to list all the multitude of things that we were allowed to do. And yet still, just a few things that we're not supposed to do, and that's exactly what we do. We screw up all the time. We sin all the time. It comes natural to us. It's just like I was telling you about the light socket. Right? I was telling you what I'm not supposed to do. Bzz, that's what I did. And that's what happens to us. And so God demonstrated his love for us. You see, the gospel, I know you guys hear about the gospel, but the gospel started in perfection. It started in the Garden of Eden. It started when there was no sin, there was no death, there was no shame, there was nothing wrong. And Adam and Eve had the perfect life. He was the perfect dude, she was the perfect gal. It was the perfect relationship, and they were in paradise. There was nothing wrong. We have no idea what that is. We have lived in sin ever since. And God tells them one thing not to do, and that is precisely what they do. Sin enters the world. Satan tells them, and he tells us still to this day, you're not surely going to die. God's just trying to sell you short. He's trying to cut out on your fun. And so what do? Oh, well, I want to have fun. Bzz. Right? And then we find out that sin hurts. This is why you guys get hurt when something bad happens. Sin hurts. And then we continue hurting and hurting and hurting. We continue sinning and sinning, sinning. And then we get hurt more, and so we sin more. I've been so guilty of that in my life. And what ends up happening? Then we're like, oh, life sucks. I don't even want to be here anymore. I've been there too. But remember, words are empty without context or action. God demonstrated for us his love for us. And so he sends Jesus. So Jesus, I talked a little bit how he's born in Bethlehem. And he grows up and he's learning. He's learning a trade. He's learning about the scriptures. He goes out in the wilderness. He gets his ministry calling. He knows what to do. He goes and he selects his disciples. He starts training them, discipleship. He's training them how to make disciples who will make disciples. You hear Reg talking about that all the time. And then he sends them out. He's telling them what to do. And then he brings them back. He's like, okay, now let's do this. And he does about 3 years of ministry. And they're thinking, oh, okay, this is going to be awesome. We've got the real Messiah here. He's going to save us from Rome. Rome is just kind of controlling everything at that time. Roman authority ruled. And so his 12 disciples and his followers are like, okay, Jesus is he's going to save us from this whole Rome thing. And then he keeps talking to them weird stuff. He's like, guys, I'm going to be leaving here soon. Don't worry, the Comforter's coming. They're like, okay, well, you must be the Comforter or whatever. Yeah, sure, whatever. Okay, Jesus. Do you notice that? Like, Jesus will say something important to us and we don't really pay attention. It's kind of like I was saying earlier. We'll quote John 3:16 super fast and not even think about what it means to us. And so then we're like, okay, yeah, Jesus, yeah, whatever. And then the next thing you know, in the middle of the night, Jesus gets arrested. He gets taken in for some made-up trials. And then the next day they take him out and they have a post. You see, the Romans were really good at torture. And they have a post and they take Jesus, and what they would do is they will shackle your wrist to that post. So you're like this. Your arms are extended out. So what it does is when you do this, it pulls all the skin on your back tight, right? I mean, if you were pulled back like this, it'd be all wrinkly. But if you move forward, right? You know what I'm saying? So he's all pulled forward like that. And there's a guy called the lictor. And his job is to actually whip the person. He's sick. He probably has some sort of a mental problem. I would say he's probably demon-possessed to some extent. He actually takes joy in ripping people to shreds. And so he takes, there's a rod estimated between 12 and 18 inches long. And off that rod are cords. And in those cords are woven in like balls, like steel balls, and then pieces of bone, like chips of bone. Have you ever seen if you take chicken bones and you break them, they splinter? Okay, there's like that. There's pieces of bone that are set into these cords. And so what the lictor does is he takes it and he throws the strings, the cords, against Jesus' back. Now what that does, those steel balls, when they hit, first of all, they're bruising, but they're also heavy enough, and he's strong enough, that they're breaking. They're crushing stuff inside, bones, ribs, whatever. And then those little pieces of bone, they actually stick into the flesh. And then at that point, he pulls back. So where those pieces of bone have hooked in, now he yanks, and they rip out pieces of flesh. And then he takes it again, and he slings it again at our Lord. And then he yanks it back. And he's laughing. I mean, the guy's just like hysterical about this. He's like a Nazi guard. And he's just cackling the whole time. He throws it in and yanks it out. Throws it in, he's yanking it out. And he's shredding Christ who never sinned. He's shredding his back. And so then, these guys, like the other soldiers are standing around, they're laughing, they're making fun of Jesus, like, hey, why don't you go and save yourself? Do something about it. Come on, oh great king. The guy again, he's just taking it, throwing it again, sticking this stuff in there. Jesus' back was just shredded meat when they're done. The whole backside of him, all the way down, shredded. And then they take him, and they say, okay, well, you're the king. You're real strong. And part of the punishment is he has to carry his cross. So some people say, well, maybe he didn't carry the whole cross. Maybe he just carried the cross thing. Either way, he's shredded. You see, when they would whip him, some of those would come across the shoulders, either side. And so it's going to rip meat from the shoulders. And so if you've ever carried anything, like if you've done carpentry work or whatever, you carry stuff on your shoulders, you get bruises or blisters, man, it gets rough. And so now Jesus carries this. They take him up to this hill called Golgotha, the place of the skull. They put the cross together down on the ground, and they lay him onto it. So his back, that's hamburger, is now laying on the wood. They drive the spikes through hands or wrists, I don't care, through his feet. And so he's laying there, he's been pierced. Isaiah 53 says that he was pierced for our sin. He's spread out. Now it would be really bad to be whipped and then to be nailed to this cross. I mean, you can imagine having spikes driven through. That would be horrible. But that wasn't even the worst part. They have at the foot of the cross, and remember it's laying on the ground, there's a hole, there's a socket. And that's where they take the cross, and as they stand it up, it drops down into that socket. And at that point, your full weight is hanging basically on 3 pins. One went through both your feet were crossed, one went through those, and then you had one in each hand. So at that point, your body drops. Remember what's happened to his back. So now he's hanging there, okay? He's hanging from his hands, he's trying to support himself from his feet. And his back, all the wounds are now kind of fusing with the wood of the cross. Well, if you're hanging this way, what happens is your diaphragm, the muscle that moves down to create vacuum in your lungs, so you take in a breath, it can't really function right. And so what you do is you pull yourself up. So now you've got that back that is hamburgered, right? And here's what's going on. Here's the cross, and he's against it, and he's down, and he has to take a breath. So he pushes against those spikes that are through his feet and in his hands, and he takes a big breath, and he grinds that meat up the cross. Each breath, he reopens those wounds on his back. As his back is fusing to that wood, as the scabs are starting to adhere to the wood. Meanwhile, people are laughing at him. Why don't you save yourself? Oh, he can call down legions of angels to save him. Why didn't he do that? You know what he says to him? Father, forgive them. They don't even have a clue of what they're doing. They don't know what they're doing, so Father, please forgive them. He had every ability to call down all the forces of heaven and annihilate the earth. But he didn't. Why? Because he demonstrated love. You see, his motive was love. We said, what are those 3 words that motivate us? I love you. Those will drive us to do unbelievable things. It drove him to do the most unbelievable thing. And that was give his life for us. You see, it is us. We're the ones who deserve to die. We're the ones who deserve to have all the punishment heaped on us. But you want to know the worst part of the crucifixion? It wasn't what the Romans did to Christ. It was what God the Father did. Because at that moment, while he's hanging on the cross, he takes all of our sin and he heaps it on the Son. And then in the Spirit, he punishes Jesus for what I have done and what you have done. And Christ said, I take it. Father, I'll take it. And he punished him to death, even death on a cross. It is the most horrible story in history because it still involves you and me. It was our sins that nailed him there, not his own. Christ never did anything wrong. We nailed him. He dies. They take the cross down. They take him off, they wrap him up, and they put him in a tomb. It's done. The disciples have now run and they've hid. Their hope is gone. The Messiah is dead. Jesus, he's no more. Peter, who was his right-hand man, he denied him. He's like, I don't know that guy. I got nothing to do with him. You see how quickly we lose hope? But we'll do anything for somebody that says, I love you. But Jesus didn't leave it there. 3 days later, he came back. He appeared to his disciples. He let them touch the wounds to prove that it was him. And then he said, now, here, go, make disciples. You see, our hope is found in Jesus. And some of you here tonight, you've said, yeah, Jesus, I've been following Jesus since I was 6 months old, sure. I was following Jesus before I was born, yeah, sure. Or maybe you were just like, I've never even heard of this before, but this is unbelievable. You mean somebody died for me? Jesus actually went through that for me? You see, the gospel is the message of salvation for us. It is the message of somebody giving up everything for us. Ben giving up his life for welding was just a drop in the bucket compared to what Christ did for us. I'm going to ask the adults if you guys will take some places in the back. Guys, here's what I'm going to do for you. I want to give you guys an opportunity. I'm going to play through a couple songs. And I want you to consider what Christ has done for you. I want you to consider that Christ didn't jump into an icy pond to save you. No, Christ was punished in your place for you, that you might have everlasting life with him. The adults are in the back, and I want to tell you guys something. The adults will demonstrate their love for you, and they're doing it this weekend. They're not paid to be here. They're volunteering to be here. They're not paid to make the meals. They're volunteering to make the meals. They're not paid to stay in the cabins with you. They're volunteering to do that. They're not paid to listen to you. They're volunteering to do that. They're doing all of these things because they are demonstrating their love for you. Because they understand what the reckless, raging fury of the love of God is for us. If you need to talk with one of the adults, please do. If you don't know Jesus, talk with one of the adults. Say, hey, I don't even know Jesus. I don't. What does it mean to follow him? I want to know. I want to do this. Talk with one of the adults. Maybe you're dealing with something. Maybe you've given your life to Christ and now you're just dealing with some super heavy stuff. This is an opportunity for you to just take one of the adults and say, hey, I want to talk with you. Could you pray with me? This is that opportunity. Like I said, I'm going to just lightly play through some songs and just give you guys however much time you need. Okay? And then after that, we're gonna do a couple other things. But I want to give you that time. So, like I said, if you want to go back, find one of the adults, talk with them if you need to. If not, but I'm going to say this. If you're not talking with one of the adults, be quiet. Be respectful of those who are needing to deal with stuff. Maybe you don't need to deal with something. But there will be a day when you need to deal with something and you would want others to be respectful of you. Okay? So I'm going to play through some music. We'll probably shut this mic off. And then, yeah, you guys can talk to some of the adults. Jesus, just before he's ready to go to the cross, he gathers his disciples together in an upper room. And they're going to celebrate the Passover. You see, for many years, the Passover to the Jews was the celebration of when the angel of death passed over in Egypt. God told his people, he said, take a lamb, slaughter it, take the blood, and put it on the door frames. And when the angel comes through Egypt, he's going to see that blood and he will pass over. Everybody else, though, the angel of death is going to slaughter. And so they did it. And so they would celebrate Passover. And they would slaughter a lamb, and they would take that blood, and they would spread it on the doorposts. It was a memorial for how God delivered them. And now Jesus, they're going to celebrate the Passover meal. And he gets his 12 disciples together, even Judas, the one that would betray him. And he says, guys, I'm the new lamb. And he says here, as a matter of fact, and he takes a piece of bread. They've been hanging out. They've been doing this Passover meal. And he takes a piece of bread and he breaks it. And he hands it to him. He says, here, this is my body. It's no longer the body of an innocent lamb that is slaughtered and then the door, the blood is spread on the doorpost. He said, now this is my body that is broken. It's not this lamb anymore. He is the new lamb. He said, my body is going to be broken. So he said, here. He breaks the bread. He says, take and eat. He says, this is my body that is broken for you. And then he takes a cup. He says, here, this juice, this wine. He said, this represents my blood that is poured out for your sins. Judas, it's even poured out for you. And so he passes that around, and his disciples are like, okay, it's Passover. So they go ahead and do it, not really fully understanding what was going to happen in just the next couple of days. You see, that next week would hold some unbelievable things. You see, in churches now, for 2,000 years, we have celebrated communion, or the Lord's Supper. And we go and we'll go up, and we take a piece of bread, and you eat a little wafer, and then maybe some juice or whatever. If you kind of come from a Catholic tradition or Lutheran, you cross yourself, and then you walk back to your seat and you sit down. And then you just kind of go on with your life like nothing really happened. You see, no different than what Passover was for the Jews for a long, long time. Communion is to us. Jesus said, whenever you do this in remembrance of me. He said, don't do this thinking about your sin. He says, look, this is, as a matter of fact, later Paul wrote to the church in Corinth and he said, guys, don't take communion in an unworthy manner. If you're not a follower of Christ, don't have anything to do with partaking this. He actually gives a caution. He gives a warning. Don't take communion if you are not walking with Jesus. And I will echo that here tonight. There's a lot of pastors that won't say anything about that. They're just like, hey, if you feel like you'd like to take it, take it. No. We're talking about the body and the blood of Christ. We're talking about this memorial of the perfect lamb that was slaughtered. Remember I was telling you he was flogged, he was beat by the lictor, he was ripped to shreds, and then he was crucified for us. That isn't something you're just like, oh yeah, I'll take a piece of bread. Yeah, hey, thanks Jesus, we'll talk to you later, yo. No, it's not about that. It's about remembering what the Lord did for us. While we were still yet sinners. While we're still yet looking at sin, and we're looking at idols, and we're looking at all these little things that we want. We're wanting ourselves to be little gods. We want to be high and lifted up. We want to be exalted. We want to be the one that's on the throne. We want people to look at us. That's sin. You see, when we turn to Christ, we come to Him, and we pay homage to Him. We say, it's all about you, Jesus. It's all about you. It's no longer about my sin that separates me from the Father. It's about you, Jesus, because you stood in the gap between me and the Father. You took my place. You took my place. So Jesus, it's all about you. So Jesus, I'll tell you what, when I'm taking this communion, when I'm taking this Lord's Supper, I'm doing it because I'm remembering what you did for me. It's not about what I can do right. It's not about what I do wrong. You know, I was challenged with this a few years ago up in Chicago. A lot of times we'll sit there and we'll take the communion and we're like, oh, you know, we got our heads hanging down. Oh, man. Oh, I'm so messed up. I'm so wretched. Such a horrible sinner. I don't deserve all. But I'll go ahead and take it. Or perhaps there should be a time of victory. And we're saying it's all about Jesus. It's all about our Lord who died for us, who took our place. Got adults, and they're going to have different places here to serve you guys communion, to serve you. For those of you who are looking to Jesus and you're saying, Jesus is my all in all. He's everything to me. It's for you. If you aren't sure, look, if you aren't sure, you need to be talking with one of the adults about what's going on in your life. That's the fact. As far as I'm concerned, well, I'd say as far as God is concerned, here, tonight, there's two kinds of people. Those who say, Jesus, you're my all in all, and those who say, I'm figuring it out. I'm doing all right. There's those two kinds of people in this room. If you're saying, I'm all right, I'm figuring it out, you really need to start talking with some adults to figure out what's going on. Because eternity is a terribly long time to be separated from God and under His wrath. You see, you either accept Christ as the way, or you look to yourself for your own way, which is no way at all. It is the path that leads to destruction. If the adults will come up, again, I'm going to play. I'm going to play a song here. So here's what I'll tell you. I know some of you guys know this song. If you know it, sing along with me. If you don't know it, that's cool. But either way, here's my challenge for you. I'm going to say a prayer. I'm going to say a prayer and just. And I'll start into the song. If you know it, like I said, sing it. And then find one of the adults, go up to them, and and they are going to gladly serve communion to you. Father, we just give you glory. Worthy is the Lamb who was slain. Worthy is the Lamb who was slain. Father, we hail King Jesus. He's our warrior lamb. Thank you that Christ came. You demonstrated your love for us through Christ. In Jesus' name, amen. Worthy is the Lamb who was slain. Holy, holy, sing a new song to Him who sits song, heaven's mercy see. Worthy is the Both rainbows of living color, flashes of lightning, were singing on their strength and glory and power. You, the only wise King. Holy, holy, holy is the Lord God Almighty, who was and is to come. All creation I sing praise to the King. You are my everything, and I will adore you. Filled with wonder, awestruck wonder, at the mention of your name. Jesus, your name is power, bread and living water, such a marvelous mystery. Holy, holy, holy is the Lord God Almighty, who was and is to come. All creation I sing praise to the King of Kings. You are my everything, and I will adore you. Holy, holy, holy is the Lord God Almighty, who was and is to come. All creation I sing praise to the King of Kings. You are my everything, and I will adore you. Holy, holy, is the Lord God Almighty, who was and is to come. All creation I sing praise to the King of Kings. You are my everything, and I will adore you. All for Jesus. All for Jesus. All for Jesus. It is ever only all for Jesus. Always. We're going to close with a couple songs. The band will come up. Let me say something to you guys also. Hey guys, listen. You may still be processing, and then we sing some songs and you're like, oh, well, there went my chance. No, you still have opportunity to talk with one of the adults. If that's you, please do that. Even if that's in these last couple songs that we're going to do. We're actually going to do like 3 songs here. Been hanging out with the band, getting to know them, getting to play with them. It's been kind of a learning curve. I've never played with these guys. It's just super honoring. It's humbling to be able to be here with them. we're talking about worship and what it is. And earlier, before you guys came in here, we're kind of practicing, you know. And I was just like, why are you guys doing this? Why are you up here on the stage? And it was cool as they were just communicating. They're like, this is how we talk to God. This is a way that we're just like telling God what we think of Him, and we want to sing to Him. And that's what we want for you. We want you to have the opportunity that, you know, whether you sing good or not, it doesn't matter. It's an opportunity for you to say, God, I love you. God, thank you. If you need to talk with one of the adults still, please, please, please do that. Do not put off for tomorrow what needs to be done today. Sing with me. Our God, a firm foundation, our rock, the only solid ground. Nations rise and fall, kingdoms once strong now shaken. We trust forever in your name, the name of Jesus. We trust the name of Jesus. You are the only King forever. Almighty God, we lift you higher. You are the only King forever, forevermore. You are victorious. You are the only King forever. Almighty God, we lift you higher. You are the only King forever.
And I realize just how beautiful you are.
just going to see if you guys know the words, sing them. Light of the world, you step down into darkness. Open my eyes, let me see beauty that made this heart adore you. Hope of a life spent with you. Here I am to worship. Here I am to bow down. Here I am to say that you're my God. You're altogether lovely, altogether worthy, altogether wonderful to me. King of all days, oh so highly exalted, glorious in heaven above. Come to me, you came to the earth you created, all for our sake became whole. Here I am to worship, here I am to bow down, here I am to say that you're my God. You're altogether lovely, altogether worthy, altogether